Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Estate Market Report for San Jose, California for April of 2023. This is where we take a few minutes out of our day to review all the big numbers for San Jose and figure out where we've been, where we are, and where we're likely going in the coming months of 2023. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look. And as we usually do, we're going to go ahead and start with active listings. This is the total inventory that was available in the month of April. So for you buyers out there, this is the number of homes you had to choose from. And for you sellers out there, this is the number of homes you had to compete with in your marketplace in order to get your home sold. Now, when we compare here, this is an important distinction to make on this particular graph, and it's actually true of all of the graphs that I'll be using here. This kills two birds with one stone. It lets you look at this and see over the past months how the market has performed in terms of inventory, but it'll then also let you compare this year to last year. You'll look all the way to the right and you'll see that April of 2022 and April of 2023 are right next to each other, so you can get a very easy visual distinction between those 2 years. So you're getting that year over year number, but then you're also getting sort of the trend that's been happening. Why do I do that? Because of seasonal influences. Whenever someone compares one month to the next month, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It makes more sense to compare year over year so that you're dealing with the same seasonal influences as the same time last year, right? So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look. We can see that we are down 28% in terms of overall inventory in San Jose for April of 2023. Last year, it was 681 homes. This year, it's 488. And again, that's a 28% decline. Another thing to note here that's kind of interesting is that only gives us 1.1 months of inventory. That's what MOI is. And the reason why that's interesting is because a balanced market is considered 5 to 7 months nationally. In our local market, I don't really think that's a right number. I don't think 5 to 7 is really balanced for us here in Santa Clara County. I think 4.5 to 5.5 or 6 is really closer to the truth in terms of being a balanced market. Different folks will have different opinions on that. But no matter how you slice it, we are nowhere near a balanced market. And if we're judging our market just on that number, you would think we're in a seller's market just because inventory is so ridiculously low that if we froze the inventory where it is right now and froze the number of homes sold at what it was in April, it would only take us a month, less than a month and a half to sell off everything that's currently in inventory in San Jose. If we take a look at this to try to get some feeling for how things are going to go, you'll note that June and July are peak months, at least they were last year. That tends to be the case, so we probably have not reached our peak. We do tend to see an awful lot of new listings starting in February and March, and April is typically the big month for new listings. But this is just overall inventory. So as we see things move forward, we'll see how things go. But using last year as a guide from April on, we should expect to see inventory increasing with a peak in June or July for us. If we look at last year between March and April, we can see that we had an increase in inventory, but boy, is it, in terms of percentage increase, it is a very small one compared to the same time last year. So we're not seeing as much inventory growth this year as we did last year at the same time. Now, if we look at total new listings, and these are the number of sellers the number of homeowners who decided to become sellers in the month of April, dramatic decreases from the same time last year. Again, if we go all the way over here to April of 2022, we can see that we had 993 homes listed in the month of April, only 636 listed in San Jose in April of 2023. That's a 36% decline, so a very substantial decrease in the number of folks who want to sell. Why? Couple of things. Public perception definitely plays into it in terms of whether or not folks believe the market is softening or becoming more robust in terms of what sellers can get for their homes. But even more importantly, an awful lot of folks have interest rates on their mortgages that are below 3% or 3.5%. Given what we're faced with in terms of what interest rates are at right now, the idea of doubling your interest rate by selling and having to purchase a new home is very daunting to sellers today. The only sellers I'm finding who don't care about this are folks who could get their price here and they're planning to move to an area where homes are lower priced enough that they could literally pay cash for it with what they would make on their home here in California. So that tends to be where I'm seeing the most activity in terms of sellers that are willing to jump in. For those of you who are considering selling and you're not for these interest rate reasons, feel free to reach out to me. I have solutions and suggestions I can make. I also have a tool that can help you explore all the various ways you could potentially get your hands on that next home you want while you're still owning the home you're in now, so that you're not having to get totally impacted by crazy interest rates. And there's a few creative ways to do it. So I've got a great tool called HomeBot AI. Head over to soldbyrobert.com. Right there on the front page, enter your address. And while it is a pricing tool, that's not the vast majority of the great data that it offers. It's going to let you understand your equity, understand if refinancing makes sense, which obviously probably doesn't for you right now, but it's a great tool for exploring your options as a homeowner rather than focusing just on what your home is worth from a month-to-month basis. So make sure to check that out if you'd like to. Totally free to you, provided at my cost. All right, now if we look at trends, decline from March to April of 2023. March to April of 2022, also a decline. So in terms of the seasonal trend of the direction it's heading, absolutely makes sense compared to the same time last year. However, what's interesting is note that this is it. We've already been to the peak. March, April, if we look at last year as a model, was the peak. So we should expect continuing decreases in the number of folks who decide to put their homes on the market. Now, as of right now, as of March, April, we are in the same kind of market in terms of interest rates as we were last year. So I think this is a pretty valuable or accurate scale that we can use to determine where we're going to head from here. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at total number of homes sold. So these are the homes that actually sold in the month of April. And just to be clear, what that means is escrow closed. So they went into contract 30 to 45 days before that. So this represents deals that were agreed on in March, most likely March. There might be some from the month before March, from February. But most likely these are about a month old in terms of when they were negotiated. And given how quickly the market's evolving in some areas, that's an important thing to keep in mind. So these are closed escrows, homes that actually sold. Everyone got their checks or made their payments or signed the papers for their loans, and everything was concluded in the month of April as it relates to the whole homes sold number. Now we can see that the number of homes sold is down dramatically from the same time last year. I apologize, I got the colors mixed up here, but April of 2022 had 844 homes. We had 449 homes in April of 2023. That's a 47% drop, and it's a drop from March. Not typical. If we look at last year, between March and April, we saw homes sold increase last year. Now, one thing to keep in mind is interest rates went up in March of 2022. So there's that possibility, because remember, this is lagging from a month to 45 days before, that a lot of the homes that sold in April of 2022 were transactions where the interest rates were still better, right? So that is likely a number that reflects not the entire impact of the raise in interest rates, but our April this year number clearly does. And the fact that it's flat in comparison to March of 2023, when the same market influence was in play, is very interesting, because we should at least see some sort of trend that emulates that, but doesn't at all. In this case, literally, it's the same number. And for a community the size of San Jose, that's a little bit mind-boggling. So if we look at trends, if we try to figure out trends starting from April of last year, we should see from here a decline. This is fairly typical. April tends to be the peak month. So many people have celebrated all the great numbers that we've seen in April. They don't realize that tends to be the peak, and they're extrapolating from the April numbers, oh, the rest of the year is going to be fantastic, where the reality is we tend to see a drop after April. So I think we will see that. We will see between April and May a drop in the total number of homes sold if we are anywhere on par with last year. I think best case scenario is relatively flat. In other words, we had 450 homes sold last month. We have 449 homes this month. It wouldn't surprise me if plus or minus 5 to 10 homes is what we see in May, or a more substantial decline. But I'm not expecting to see a big jump, because we haven't seen anything in the market that would indicate that that would be the case, right? No great numbers relating to interest rates or anything like that, and particularly right now. So bad news, I think, in terms of where we're going to go with sold homes. Next on the list, pending sales for April of 2023. So let's talk about this for a second. The reason why I've started reporting this is because it's a leading indicator, right? It tells us how many homes are likely to sell next month, but it's also a way to get some insights into how many homes don't actually end up selling that went pending, meaning they accepted an offer, but escrow didn't close the following month for whatever reason. This is an interesting one to keep in mind simply because financing is so challenging right now. Interest rates are so high. I want us to get a handle on how many transactions are failing because of financing. And I do look more deeply into this to figure out what those issues were that prevented something from closing. But if a home does not close escrow, the odds are it was because financing fell through. A buyer was unable to get the bank to commit to making the loan on the house. All right, so if we look at pending sales in April of 2023, the number dropped 32% when compared to the same time last year. So I think that's very normal. I think that's a number that we would expect given the realities of last year and this year. If we look at the trends, we can see that between March and April of last year, we saw a drop in pending sales. We saw a further drop from April to May. My guess is, again, we will see a drop. And as this year, remember, we, again, had no change really between March and April, whereas last year there was a dramatic drop. And again, that's explained by the interest rates, right? What we saw happen dramatically. Again, I would guess that we either see flat performance between April and May of this year or a drop. I would bet on a drop just because right now interest rates are nuts. I've seen rates above 7. I've seen just below 7 at 6.9. And that's for folks with amazing credit ratings. And this is specifically if you're shopping for a loan in San Jose. The other interesting thing to note is the lower number of lenders that are even providing data to some of these tools that let you search for mortgages online. It's really kind of shocking. Now, I've also included a graph here where we compare sold and pending so that we can see what happens. So pending is green. We saw a jump in, like, let's take a look here at March, for instance. Relatively flat, almost no change at all. And we really saw that reflected in the sold homes, which makes sense, right? It should be 1 month. The homes that sell should emulate the trend we saw in the previous month. So we saw pending in February take a jump, and we would expect homes sold to take a jump, and we did. Notice how they kind of converge here between sold and pending, which is an interesting thing to note, and we see it really on a level that's even higher. So clearly this represents homes that sold where the offer was accepted both in February and in January to some extent, because this is higher than what the pending was in the previous month. So if we look at sold and compare to the previous month, we can see that in this case, more homes went pending, fewer of those homes sold, so perhaps longer escrows. And an extrapolation for a longer escrow tends to be financing. If you're going in to purchase a home and asking for a 45-day close or a 50-day close, the odds are that's because of financing, because it's harder to get that paperwork through, which is another little bit of information I'm trying to pull out of these. If we take this, and as I said, the same trends that we already discussed relating to pending sales, I think are going to hold true here. But this is just an interesting graph for you to be able to take a look at to try to figure out what's happening as we go from month to month, how many homes are actually closing versus being made offers on in the previous months. All right. Let's go ahead and look at San Jose average original list price. And original list price is not a commonly reported numbers among real estate agents, and I think that's a mistake. Why? This is a way to get a peek inside the minds of sellers, because this is the very first number that's home sellers that were aspiring to get their home sold agreed on to list their home at. So when that home was first listed, the very first entry into what I want to get for my house was this number. It's probably not what the price was at the home an offer was made, at the time an offer was made, but this gives a look into the psychology of the sellers and calibrates us to their expectations. And we can see that when compared to the same time last year, interestingly enough, and this is a new trend because San Jose's been out of whack for a while now, we are actually seeing that the average original list price is down 3.3% compared to the same time last year. Last year is $1,440,000. This year it's $1,392,000. So on average, sellers are now actually expecting to get less than they got a year ago. In past months, that was definitely not the case. We had months where folks were expecting 10% over asking price. Now, one reason why I think we're seeing more aggressive pricing is I think folks have kind of gotten the word through the data and now want to make sure they get sold this selling season, so they're pricing more appropriately. In terms of trends, what are we seeing? Obviously, this has been in a pretty dramatic decline since February. Just each month has been a decline. But overall, it's been relatively flat up until we got to December and January, and then saw that little bit of an uptick in February, which is also normal. February is a month where lots of homes come onto the market, and I think we have expectations that are higher as they start. And then later, we'll see some of these homes adjust their prices through reductions, and we'll cover that in a minute as well. Where do I expect average original list price to go? I expect it to stay about where it is. My anticipation would be that we'd see it be flat. If we look at April of last year, we can see it was relatively flat for the next 3 or 4 months up until August. I would expect to see more or less the same thing here. Average sales price. Now, unlike what people want to get, this is what folks actually got. And we can see that last year they were getting $1,574,000 on average for homes that sold in San Jose. And that's a 10.2% drop from that number to what we saw in April of 2023, where homes were selling on average for $1,414,000. So good calibration, I think, to the market in terms of where we're seeing homes being priced right now and what homes are selling for right now, which indicates to me that that may improve activity in general just because homes are priced better. If we're looking at a trend, the overall trend is down with a uptick in March. Again, that's relatively normal. We start to see homes, if homes are going to sell, particularly closer to asking price, particularly at the luxury level, we start to see that activity happen in March and April. And we had our peak in April. Last year, we had our peak in April on price. So where do I expect us to go from here? I expect average sales prices to drop. They dropped from April on last year. My guess is they'll drop from April on this year. And compared to the year previous, I think we'll see it all being that 10% or more, or maybe a little less per month moving forward. Next, percent of list price. This is how much homes are selling for above or below asking price. At 100%, folks are getting their asking price. We can see that this month, folks were getting 104.5% of asking price, meaning that on average, homes were selling for 4.5% over asking price, right? That indicates multiple offers. That indicates a more competitive marketplace. Last year, it was 114.8, so 14.8% above asking price a year ago. That's a 10.3% overall percentage shift between April of 2022 and 2023. Why are we seeing, if we're seeing all these other realities about price drops and other things relating to percent of list price, why are we seeing this over 100%? Because this is the season when it should happen, right? April tends to be the peak. Let's look at last year. March and April were the peak. March was the peak at 116. April, we started to see that influence of lower interest rates, so it dropped to 114.8, and then it steadily dropped until we hit below 100% in August. Then we got a little bit of a jump over 100% in September, but stayed below asking price until February. Where do I think we're going to go from here? It's all downhill from here. It'll just go down, and I think we will be back to below 100% within 2 or 3 months. It wouldn't surprise me if once the season really kind of draws to a close in July, if that's when we see things sort of phase out any above asking price stuff. But because of the way the market's working right now, we may be back below asking price sooner than July, just because of the market influences as it relates to things like interest rates and whatnot. And also, I think that the over asking price phenomenon is going to be a front-loaded thing in the market, because what you're going to see is those most desirable homes in their price point or category are going to sell first, and they're going to sell for over asking price. Then as buyers have to adjust their expectations moving forward, existing inventory that wasn't quite as eye-catching as the homes that did sell will then get the attention, and we'll see those homes start to sell, but there will be a lot less clamoring for those. So I don't think we'll see those homes ending up going for multiple offers at above asking price. Next, days on market. This is how long it takes a home to get sold. How many days on average was a home on the market in San Jose before it sold? Last year in April of 2022, it was 9 days. It's up 111% at 19 days now, but it's also down from March. If we look at March of last year, we can see that, again, this is when the market was insane. The market started its change after April, March, April, where we saw steady increases in the days on market. But we bottomed out in April of last year at 9 days, and that's kind of what you would expect seasonally comparing it. So if that's the case, then we should expect days on market from here to increase. Relatively mild increases at first, but then jumping as we get into July, August, and September as we sort of exit the primary buying period. And I think that's what we'll see. I think 19 days will likely be our low point for days on market for 2023. And we'll see it just being flat perhaps for the next month or two, and then dramatically increasing as we move through the rest of 2023. Next, price reductions. This is the percentage of homes in San Jose that had a price reduction in the month of April. Down to 17%. I think that's a good indicator of a couple of things. One, it definitely reflects homes coming on the market at a more reasonable price, which we saw in original list prices. So we don't have to have price reductions, but it also reflects that people don't want to reduce their price right now. They see themselves at the beginning of the hot market, so they're sticking with their price to see where they go, even for those homes that were priced a little higher. Last month, it was at 24.4%. My guess is that as we move into the year, we'll see this remain relatively flat for the next couple of months. But as we get into July or just beyond July, I think we'll see this number increase. For those sellers that end up being on the market, once the average days on market starts getting closer to 30 again, I think this number goes up as sellers are forced to reevaluate their pricing and get that number down. Now, for those of you out there who are on the market right now, if you're not having regular conversations with your real estate professional on what's happening with the market, why are we not getting the attention? Why have we not sold yet? Now, in my business, I like to do a review like this every week. I have 30 years worth of experience where I am informed by various metrics, right? I should know how many phone calls have I gotten? How many asks for more information? How many hits on various websites has it gotten? How many folks have favorited my house in various on-site, on Zillow and other places? How many people have favorited that listing? And if I don't see things on par with what I would expect in a well-done marketing effort for a listing, I want to know why, and I want to try to fix it. And odds are one of the big things that would affect that is the price. So definitely have conversations. Every day you wait from here on, you are losing money. So make sure you're having that conversation with your real estate person. All right. That's about it, folks. I hope this has been useful for you. As always, the goal is to leave you with more information on the table that I take up in your time. Hope this has been useful. It's been some very interesting market changes over the last couple of months. And as always, the tools I provide can be accessed at my website, soldbyrobert.com. And I've got great tools for homeowners. Whether you want to sell or not, I've got a great tool for you. And if you're a buyer who wants some creative new ways to search the market here in Santa Clara County, I got a great new tool for that too. So check that out. soldbyrobert.com. Happy to provide those two tools to you at no cost. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk to you all next time.